We're ready to get going here again. So we're now on the consent agenda. And for those of the audience, the items appearing on the consent agenda are considered routine and may be approved by the board in one motion. There's two items on the consent agenda: the resolution directing the ordinances to be read by title only, and the approval of the board minutes of the November 13, 2013 board meeting. So is there any item on the consent agenda that any board members would like to have removed for consideration? Then is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? So moved. Second. I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? And all those in favor of the motion to approve the items on the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay. Approved unanimously. I heard no nays, correct? Let's move on then to the resolutions. First resolution is Resolution 13-12-71, which is authorizing submission of a grant application to the Federal Transit Administration for fiscal year 14 State Surface Transportation Program capital assistance. Also an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation to exchange funds and transfer of appropriated funds within the FY fiscal year 13-14 general fund budget. Mr. General Manager.
Board President, I think by the time you read the title, we've gone through the report. Actually, this resolution does do a number of different things, but it is fundamentally a fund trade over a number of years, or a few years, with ODOT. And it allows ODOT to continue the subsidy that they're providing for the Amtrak Cascade service. They're reimbursing us with federal funds, which we have eligibility for, and so this has no impact on TriMet's general fund. But in order to make this happen, we need to reconcile the budget this year, which is actually the budget element noted in the title, as well as enter into the intergovernmental agreement associated with this transfer of funds between ODOT and TriMet. So essentially, ODOT is giving us federal funds that we can use on a preventive maintenance program, and we're providing them TriMet general funds, essentially, that they can use for the Amtrak Cascade service in the years ahead. And again, they recognize that they need to find, ultimately, work with the state legislature in 15 in particular, 2015, to find an ongoing permanent source for the subsidy of those Amtrak Cascade services. But just to note, there is a great deal of benefit to our region and our riders associated with having that service continue. So with that, I'd certainly be happy to answer any questions and recommend approval.
Good. Any questions of the General Manager?
Yes, General Manager, I noticed that in this, you're going to transfer the funds out of the contingency,
right,
to give to them, and then we'll get the dollars back, and then we're going to use it for maintenance. How are we going to fund, or is there any intention of refunding the contingency, and what impact would not having contingency dollars have upon us as we go through the rest of the fiscal year?
We don't see any need to access the contingency. We're not forecasting the need to access the contingency in the next 6 months. So it will be able to reconcile all of this within the budget preparation for fiscal year 15. And again, this is really more because we didn't anticipate this fund trade at the time that we put the budget together, so we need to make sure that the allocations are match the obligations that we enter into with ODOT in this regard. And Dave is here and certainly answer any more technical budget questions. There is a little bit of budget law that I probably
I'm not answering your question. Let Dave come up. I'm not sure I heard your question get fully answered here. Did I?
No, it's not totally, because I guess Dave might be able to shed some light on this. When you say that we're treating this as new dollars, which I know they are, in a way there are new dollars coming in, but on the other hand, they're really not new dollars, because all we did is swap some dollars. I took $5,000 from Travis and gave it to Joe, and Joe gave $5 to me, and I gave it back to him, but he uses it for a different thing, but it came out of a different pot. And I just cannot reconcile yet how this is dealing with the contingency, and I guess in fact, again, with that, and if there is a need for And the reason we put contingency in is because according to what we have as guidelines, we must have so much in contingency to do. And if that's going to be impacted, then I don't feel that we've done what we've mandated ourselves to do. I might be misunderstanding this. This was the last thing I went to bed with last night.
So under supporting and budget law, you're only appropriating on the expenditure side of things. So it's not really even looking at the revenue side. So this transaction, this series of transactions really grosses up, increases our revenues, and increases our expenditures. But there's no net impact on our bottom line. So, but since it's increasing expenditures, we need to show appropriate money to make that expenditure. So we'll have additional revenues coming in that will be exactly the same as those additional expenditures. So at the end of the year, we'll have the same bottom line, but we still need this budget transfer to be able to make this additional expenditure.
So what would be the balance left in contingency, and will we be in policy guidelines with the contingency account?
So the contingency policy is part of the ending fund balance policy, and it says that the ending fund balance at the year will be at least 2.5 times the monthly operating expenses for the next year. That will not be impacted at all by this transaction. Ending fund balance will be the same because we'll have more money coming in than we had originally budgeted for, equal to the amount of this additional expense. So it does create potentially, if we were concerned that contingency wouldn't have been enough to deal with changes during the year, we potentially could have had an issue. But we're at the end of the year, we'll be at the same place, and we will have a little less contingency available to us during this year. But now that we're almost 6 months in, we're comfortable that we have enough to deal with any unexpected items that may come up for the last half of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions? Good question. Any other questions? Well, seeing none, is the board ready to make a motion to approve resolution 13-12-71?
So moved.
A motion?
Second.
That was second. Any further discussion or questions? All right, then, I'll call a question. All those in favor of the motion to approve resolution 13-12-71, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. Let's move on then to
Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
I can't, the heating system works from the 5th floor up, 4th floor down. They have a problem with it, so.
So you're saying you weren't able to cure the problem?
It's beyond my care.
All right, thank you.
Put on your coats.
I mean, just,
All right, thank you. We'll hopefully we'll warm up slowly here though.
easy to
So,
close, buddy.
let's move on to resolution 13-12-72, which is authorizing a contract with Shepke, if that helps pronounce, the Northwest Incorporated for purchase of replacement vehicles for the provision of lift service.
And Mr. Board President, members of the board, first thing I wanted to do is to fix a slide. I just wanted to make sure I introduce the gentleman on my left, who is Lance Burrs, if you haven't met him, who is filling in for a traveling general counsel, and we're very pleased to have him here, one of our staff attorneys, and actually has probably done more work on these resolution items than anybody else in the world. But this is a procurement for 27 lift vehicles that were included in our capital program for this year. Our typical approach for acquiring these vehicles is using the state purchase agreement, which is a pre-bid list of eligible vendors, and then we actually have gone through that list and asked for additional information and additional discounts or pricing. And what I would note to you is that we have selected Shepke Northwest Inc. for the provision of these vehicles. They're fairly standard vehicles, and as we know, they're on the state list because many agencies throughout the state board that do acquire these very same vehicles or this type of vehicle. The average price per vehicle is about $84,000, and the overall procurement, including some of the installation of the unique equipment for TriMet, is $2.3 million. With that, we recommend approval, or certainly people to answer any questions you might have.
Questions of the general manager?
Just one general question. What type of vehicles will there be? Ford chassis, General Motors chassis, Freightliners, Mercedes-Benzes?
There won't be Mercedes-Benzes.
Hey, 84,000, I was kind of thinking.
David?
Chevrolet Justice.
Chevrolet.
Chevrolet, okay, General Motors, all right.
And I,
Yes.
in order, are there any of these vehicles coming up, maybe in the next contract, purchasing that are electric vehicles or CNGs, a compressed natural gas?
The answer is we can make that determination year by year as we go through this.
Yeah.
But none of these are standard fuel
Yeah.
vehicles.
I'm getting little hints from down south that there's going to be more of a push with the state to,
So we will, at a certain point in time.
FYI.
Yes, no, absolutely. And one of the things we'll do is at some point in time, we'll be briefing you on the status of some of the alternative fuel
Great.
choices that we have, both for these vehicles as well as
Yeah.
for the buses.
thank you.
Other questions? All right, then is there, do I hear a motion to approve resolution 13-12-72?
So moved.
A motion,
I'll second.
have a second. Any other questions or comments? I guess I just note that, for the record, it looks like it's great competition. I think that's four vendors, actually participating. That's good to see, and they're all, very close together in terms of the bids. And I think the subjective part of this is good, especially when I like to see 100% of the specifications being met by the recommended vendors. So I'm comfortable with moving forward with that. So if there's nothing else then, all those in favor of the motion to approve resolution 13-12-72, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. All right, the next item up is resolution 13-12-73, which is authorizing transfer of vintage trolley cars 511 and 512 to the St. Louis Loop Trolley Transportation Development District. And I would note that we have a few people who would like to testify on this issue, so after we hear the staff report, I think we should get right into the public comments.
Yeah, I'll try to be relatively brief, but I'd like perhaps just to save time, if I could ask Chris Polar, who's the director from the St. Louis Trolley Project, as well as Phil Feeling and Rick Gustafson come up. And I would just note that this is, I think, a very elegant solution for us in a number of different ways. But the proposal before you would transfer our replica vintage trolley cars 511 and 512 to St. Louis to operate on the new Heritage streetcar loop. I would also note to you that 2 additional vintage trolleys remain in the region and are housed on in the trolley line on the one shoreline in Lake Oswego. I'd also note that these 2 trolleys are actually federally funded assets, and they actually were provided primarily funded through federal grants. And so there's a great deal of FTA interest in these vehicles, and also in this transaction. Currently, our replica vintage trolleys operate about 8 Sundays a year and are parked in the trolley barn at the Rose Quarter underneath the freeway facility. And they are in a position where they actually need investment right now, where we continue to run them. But I will also tell you that FTA has expressed concern that these assets of theirs that they provided funding for are operating only 8 days a year. That, to them, is not an ongoing operation of a transit facility. And at risk there is, frankly, the refunding of the federal share at some point in time, should they wish to pull that string. Transferring the trolleys to St. Louis will also put them back in daily use, and a very important use. Also support another FTA grantee who is trying to put together this great, I think, historic streetcar system in one of the more historic cities of our nation. And if the board approves the transfer, it provides other benefits to TriMet, one of which I'm very focused on, which is creating where the trolleys are currently housed in that maintenance park, creating in central city maintenance facility where we can dispatch, for example, signal system technicians or track technicians to the heart of our system where we often have a lot of our issues. And we think that will increase the response time for many of our crews, which are now housing primarily at Ruby Junction, but perhaps also at Elmonica and Central Washington County. The nice news about this is, of course, the great use that St. Louis will put to this, that rehabilitate the cars, and that they'll carry all the costs associated with transporting those cars to St. Louis. And once they begin operating, they'll pay us $80,000 to help offset the remaining local share associated with this. Part of the agreement was also a good faith effort, should we choose to and want to actually find a way to bring those cars back to us in 10 years if we have a place where we can operate them. One of the important reasons, I probably should note it up front, that they are only operated 2 times a year is that our tracks are so busy now with full-scale light rail vehicles that we don't have the capacity to insert these cars into service on a regular basis. And so our current service really is related to the 8 Sundays a year where we just operate on the mall downtown. And as you know, our system is busy. It's providing a lot of service on a regular basis. We have overlapping lines, particularly on the segment through the Rose Quarter. And so it has made it very difficult for us to provide the space on the tracks to operate the service. So with that, with your permission, I'd ask Chris to perhaps give you a quick overview of the St. Louis Trolley Prop. And then we have our representatives from Vintage Trolley, Inc., the local, if you will, sponsor of the service that we've been working with on this transaction as well, Bill Fairley and Jefferson.
Okay, one question, please. You're going to have any permitting problems at the barn when you're switching out the old trolleys to have the maintenance guys?
We'll have permits to procure.
Yeah.
We don't believe that there'll be any problem because there are really no exterior changes.
Any impact to the neighborhood? Good.
Yeah, all within the same
Good. Thank you.
building. Thank you. So Chris?
Good, thank you, Neil. Thank you all very much for the time and your consideration for this resolution. Speaking on behalf of the entire St. Louis region, we really appreciate this opportunity. As Neil mentioned, my name is Chris Paylor, and I'm serving as the District Administrator of the Loop Trolley Transportation Development District, which is the entity that's overseeing the design and construction, and then we will operate the project as well. My usual job is I'm the Chief Engineer for Bi-State Development Agency, which is the St. Louis Transit Authority. And they asked me to step in about 6 months ago and kind of help bring the project to completion. So I'll talk a little bit about where we are now in a later slide, but we're at a very key point in the project, and the Portland Vintage Trolleys are a key element in making sure this project can go forward. So I know time's at a premium this morning, so I'll do this very quickly, but just try to put together a short presentation to give you a very brief overview about the project, and I'd be happy to take any questions you have afterwards, or during. Please feel free to chime in. The mission of the Blue Trolley Company is to restore a streetcar system in University City and Western St. Louis City. Our proposed alignment is half in University City, and half in St. Louis. The city of St. Louis used to have an extensive streetcar system that started phasing out in the 40s, 50s with the proliferation of automobiles, and this will go back into one of those key lines right in the middle of the city. The goal is to connect Forest Park and the Delmar Loop, and I'll talk more about those 2 areas in a moment. In addition, we have our Metrolink system, our light rail system, crosses the alignment in 2 places so people can transfer from that onto the Loop Trolley system as well. And obviously to provide transit between these 2 attractions at the end, but also to provide, help stimulate redevelopment in the middle. That's kind of a prime objective of this project. The 2 ends of the alignment are very well developed, but there is an area in the middle that is prime redevelopment area. Our plan is to build / restore a 2.2-mile trolley line, again from Delmar Loop to the Missouri History Museum in Forest Park. And here's a simple map. You can see the orange line is the alignment. The big green area in the bottom right, that's Forest Park. And then the gray shaded area up top is what we call the Delmar Loop. Most people refer to it as the Loop. And then the dashed blue line is the Metrolink system. It kind of has a split, a Y right near the ball over there, and you can see it heads north and west. Why the Delmar Loop? The loop is named specifically for a loop of an old streetcar line that used to go there. Now everyone pretty much refers to it as the loop. It's a very vibrant street, and the goal is to bring streetcar service back to the loop. The American Planning Association has designated this as one of the 10 great streets of America. So I mentioned it's very vibrant, there's shopping, there's entertainment, restaurants. They're developing a large student housing complex for a neighboring university there now. An $80 million investment that going to provide housing for 600 or 700 kids, and so it's just constantly changing and growing and expanding, and this is going to be a great boon for that area. In addition, it will connect the Great Rivers Greenway tracks. Great Rivers Greenway is the authority in the region charged with developing bike and walking trails. Part of the alignment is actually going to be built in a new greenway that will have a bike and walking path next to the trolley. At the other end is Forest Park. It's one of the largest urban parks in the country. By comparison, it's about 500 acres larger than Central Park in New York. We have about 13 million visitors annually. There's a number of attractions. St. Louis Zoo is very well known around the world. Museum, Science Center, and Municipal Opera. And so we'll be just piercing the entrance in there and going around the History Museum. Now the project itself. The total estimated project cost is a little over $43 million. The majority of the funding has come from an FTA grant, Urban Circulator grant, it's a little under $25 million. Then we've cobbled together another number of other funding sources to come up with the balance. In addition, Loop Trolley Company, which is actually a separate entity from the Loop Trolley TDD, has been raising funds for the project privately. These funds are donated to the project. And the operations of the project, once it's running, will be funded by the TDD receipts, Transportation Development District receipts, fare box, as well as advertising and any other way we can figure out how to make money. There's a brief timeline. I actually started coming up with this idea in 96, 97. A few people got together and started talking about it, and we were able to cobble together the funds for a feasibility study by Metro, which is another name for my usual home, Bi-State Development Agency. Then we were able to acquire and restore 2 vintage trolleys back in 2005. And there's a picture of one of them there, and they're on display at each end of the alignment. And we'll be using them for service. And then the Transportation Development District, which really got everything going, was formed in 2008. And it's essentially outlined around the alignment. And everyone who has a business or lives in there was able to vote on it. And as you can see, it passed overwhelmingly with a 97% voter approval. So strong support along the entire alignment, and that continues today. We continued on with the engineering, which was completed about a month and a half ago. So we're ready to start construction in early 14, once we get the official okay from the FTA. The goal is to have revenue service commence in the middle of 2015. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I greatly appreciate your consideration of this proposal. If we're able to work out this transfer, as I hope we can, we'd be happy to figure out ways that we can honor the contribution of the region, TriMet and Vintage Trolley, as well as the whole Portland region for their contribution to this project. So we'd be happy to work with all the stakeholders in Portland to figure out ways to mark the cars and keep possibly the Portland Council Crest name on the cars in some capacity. In addition, we have a maintenance facility which is right on the alignment, and there's a rendering of it there. We're going to have an area that's open to the public, and it is our plan to use that area to put up displays detailing the heritage of streetcars in St. Louis. And we'd be happy to put up a similar display documenting the heritage of these cars as well as the streetcar system in Portland as well. So again, we'd be happy to work with you on those and make sure that everyone in St. Louis understands and appreciates the contribution made by the citizens of Portland. As Neil mentioned, provision is the goal for all parties is to be able to return these back to TriMet after 10 years, if you have a use for them. I've already talked to my board members, and my board members, show you the regional cooperation we have. It's the City of St. Louis Mayor, University City Mayor, St. Louis County Executive, and then the president of the Bi-State Development Agency Transit Authority. So, and they are all on board and understand the goal of trying to find a replacement for these cars. It was our plan to increase the fleet over time anyway, so we already talked about trying to come up with funds to buy additional cars over a period of time. So they understand the need for this, so we're going to move forward with trying to identify funding sources and put together a financing procurement plan with the goal of getting these cars replaced and again, hopefully increasing the size of our fleet over the 10 years. So again, thank you very much, and a very quick overview of the project, but I'd be happy to take any questions.
Yes. Chris, would you go back to that first slide,
Sure.
please?
This one?
No, no.
Oh, there it is.
Is that considered a vintage trolley?
Okay. By me or? I believe it was a trolley that was running down the streets of St. Louis back in the 1940s.
I used to ride that in high school sometimes in Philadelphia.
Oh, really?
Thank you.
Sure.
I feel old.
It's called a BCC car, and you still see them running in San Francisco.
Yes, I know, I used to live there too. Okay.
All right. Question? Is it Rick or?
Well, I'll go first. Neil and directors, thank you for giving me a minute. I'm Bill Failing. I'm president of Vintage Trolley, Inc. And I've been in this game for 40 years now. It's kind of scary to think back that far, but that's when this idea first sort of took, and it was an overall rail idea, but it really was about development in downtown. It was an instrument to ignite some activity, get some vitality back to downtown. If you remember, 40 years ago, the center of town was a Meyer and Frank parking lot. Maple. And so this was an idea that was meant to put some life back in downtown. So for 20 years, Vintage Trolley and the Max Line have shared the tracks together. And it's been a very happy partnership. Particularly the first 10 years of this operation, it was extremely lively. It ran on a regular basis. It had great support from the merchant community. All the people at our hard sells for sponsorships were first in line to partake in it. So it had a very nice community spirit to it. It also was a way to sort of bind the Lloyd Center to the core of the city. So it had quite a useful function. Because this is a happy, sad moment, sad to see the trolleys leave, but also happy to see them find a useful purpose and basically achieving some of the same objectives that we needed here in Portland. And that was to create light where there was very little of it. And again, we're all sensitive about the history of our city, of our community, and I think this is what what St. Louis is also addressing here. I'm interested, I've had some people send me some press from St. Louis, and it's exactly like it happened here. The naysayers come out, and I say, this isn't going to work, it's going to cause all these problems. But it takes about 1 week, and that all goes away, because everybody loves these vehicles, loves what they bring. So I would like to thank TriMet profusely for its cooperation for these past 20 years as stewards, as partners, realizing that you've got a lot of different things, vectors working here, but I think you've been pretty fair to us. And again, being able to know that, when the trolleys, the Council Crest trolleys disappeared from Portland, they burned them. These are going to St. Louis with the prospect of coming back. So anyway, thank you, Neil, and all the folks at TriMet. I do have one final request. That 40 years ago, when I was managing the radio station here in Portland, a dentist, Dr. Larry Griffith, came knocking on my door, and I thought, what could he possibly want? he had this vision in his mind about this whole rail thing we're enjoying today. It was up here. And he said, can you help me get some publicity with it? And I said, sure. And that morphed into getting Bill Nato on board. It morphed to getting some of the people inside the city of Portland, infrastructure involved, getting this guy involved. And I think that which Larry Griffith started, I would like to see memorialized. There's a plaque on the trolley barn right now, and I would like to see it prominently displayed, the Larry Griffith trolley barn. And that would be a little bit of continuity that I think would honor the number one guy that got all this started and keep the spirit alive. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gustafson.
Thank you. Vinnie's Trolley Inc. is a nonprofit corporation that was formed in the 80s. And Bill and I are members of the board of directors of that still. I started out as the executive director and been retired onto the board. But our purpose is to oversee that, to make sure that the trolleys are well taken care of. And we support this particular arrangement that TriMet has made with St. Louis, and at the same time, Vinnie's Trolley actually owns 513 and 514, and we maintain those here in Portland. So it's and we have an endowment that basically helps provide for the maintenance of that, and we're working with Willamette Shore Consortium to run the trolley on the corridor. This arrangement solves two of the three issues that I think are out there. One is it certainly helps St. Louis get started, which is great, and to have these cars running in St. Louis, I think we can take a lot of pride in that. The second is that it maintains a very the excellent relationship TriMet has with FTA. This kind of cooperation is the kind of thing that we've done for 40 years with the Federal Transit Administration, and it shows in terms of the level of commitment and support and confidence they have in this region with regard to transit investments. The one problem we have yet to work on, which we're going to continue to work on, which is making sure that 513 and 514 are able to operate in Portland and to be available for people to enjoy. And that requires some additional effort we haven't solved yet, but this underlines the importance of that. So that, to me, the charge is, let's find places to run these trolleys and maintain our heritage here in Portland. We can do it with the 2 trolleys that we have, and if we're successful, we have the ability to call these the 511s and 12 back from St. Louis and return them to Portland, where obviously they were the model for creating it. So we support the proposed transaction and remain committed as a nonprofit to keep in touch with St. Louis and to continue to work to find ways to run 513 and 14.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Any questions? All right, so I have 4 people who would like to testify on this issue. I'm going to call them up 2 at a time. Neil Berlin and Bill Dins. I'm going to allow you 3 minutes of testimony, but I will point out that I think a number of us need to leave about 12:30 when we have another issue coming up. So if you could be brief, that would be much appreciated.
I've been watching
Okay.
brevity in action.
I think that was sarcasm, but please, Mr. Neil, please proceed.
I've been, and I excuse my back to people, but this is my usual position, my back to my audience. I've been a vintage trolley operator for at least the last 12 years. Gordon Vidal said in his final goodbye, the sweetest words in the English language, I told you so. I'm here to tell you that this is a mistake. We still have the same needs St. Louis has, the same needs Dr. Griffin and Bill Nito had when we started. There is in here, frequency of service. If you ask Mr. McFarland over there, and we both share the same first name, just one letter difference, to show you the on-time performance when the trolley runs and when it doesn't run, and I put the two pieces in front of you, you would not be able to tell the difference of when it's running, because it doesn't hold anything up. Our on-time performance is not great. And as far as reliability goes, if the new Types 4s were as reliable as these trolleys, the Type 5 should be more trolleys. We've already got the number system going. I'm almost done. There's a saying along the alignment on one building from Thomas Jefferson that we pass every day. Most people don't see it. And it goes, look forward to distant times. We need to do that and keep them in place. I can't tell you how many people came down last Sunday to ride because they saw the article and deeply saddened by it. Deeply saddened that the route has been changed. We are in this position as Vintage Trolley due to benign neglect and malicious indifference. We can turn it around. We need your support. You are stewards of what we do. And I'm willing to work Mr. Binz's work. There are a lot of us here who are at the bottom of the heap who will be willing to volunteer their time to make it work. All I can tell you is 2 bells, trolley good, and let's get back to where we were and respect Griffin and NATO's vision. As difficult as it is, it can be done. They're doing it in St. Louis. We can renew the effort here, and it can be done. I talked to Neil about it. I talked to his predecessor about it. Done.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blaine. Mr. Lund, Jens?
I've been on the Vintage Trolley since its inception in '91, so I'm a veteran. Tell you a story about Bill Nato. I needed a letter of support for a grant, and I called him. Next day, I got a call back, what can I do for you? And I didn't know until later that he had 8 days to go. He was in the hospital on the deathbed. Now, that's a great guy. And I think we should still try to honor Bill's NATO dream and keep these vintage trolleys here. And I have a partial solution. This car is a PCC, and we have 2 St. Louis PCC cars in our barn at Brooks, which we would like to sell to them. So pass that on to St. Louis. And I remind the board that the trolleys were bought by a federal grant for the use of the Oregonians, really not the Missourians. So I think we ought to keep the assets here. And remember that much of the income for the Tri-County Metropolitan Transit District comes from the taxpayers of the 3 counties involved. That's all I have to say, and good luck, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
One other thing, this reminds me of a board meeting I attended as a Senate member at my university. They were all looking at me one day at the table, and I suddenly realized I snored.
Thank you for coming.
And any gentlemen want to, I have Bill Nato's original letter to Zell's and the proposal right here. Pretty inspiring work and written by our own Portland, Dick Thompson, the history. So there's a lot of tradition that needs to be preserved in the legacy. Thank you for your help.
Next two people we have are Douglas Allen and Jim Howell. Oh, there it is, okay. Hey, Douglas Allen. Please.
Hi, my name is Doug Allen, and I want to make a couple of points. First of all, I think these cars are not TriMet's property. Technically, legally they may be, but I think they're a regional asset, and they're held in trust by TriMet, the region. And I think that there's been a lack of transparency in this process, that before something happens like this, of these regional assets being transferred to another city, there should be a more open and public discussion about why this is happening and what the alternatives are. A few years ago, there was a situation where it was proposed to take these cars and send them to Sacramento, and the city of Portland's mayor became involved in the petition, and so that came to a halt. But I think this has happened very suddenly, and I don't think there's a lack of awareness of whether this is the correct decision that TriMet should be making. It's premature for you to approve this today without having a more open process so that the citizens of the region can be involved. And the second point I'd like to make is that I'm not in a position to totally second guess doing this, but I don't think the terms of the agreement here satisfactorily, they don't look out for the interests of the Portland region. I've been volunteering in Lake Oswego with the car that's down there now, and while that car was a Portland streetcar, it suffered a considerable amount of neglect by being stored outside. We're having to do quite a bit of restoration work, volunteers doing this work. And so this contract, it should have covered in it the return cost. There should be insurance covering any accidents that happen to it while it's in St. Louis. The normal wear and tear that takes place while it's in St. Louis should be repaired. And there's a long tradition of transit agencies sharing equipment and trading equipment back and forth and loaning equipment. I think it would be much preferable if this were a short-term loan. If indeed this is the correct decision, it should be a short-term loan, say 3 years, with renewal options. Otherwise, a 10-year period, chances are 10 years comes by and there's no funds to bring the cars back. And I think it's very short-sighted. It doesn't look at requiring the cars be stored indoors, for example, and the wear and tear that occurs on them. They have rattan seats, woodwork. Over 10 years, there's going to be a lot of wear and tear.